even with my new batteries that I got, I lost my thought. That happens, bear with me. But, this is an awesome, awesome event. I'm just privileged to be able to speak. Hang out to the end. If you don't walk out, I'll thank you very grateful. My name is Tracy Hand. This is not my wife. This is a picture of her. We started homesteading without even knowing what homesteading was years ago in an apartment, and then we moved to 3/4 of an acre, and then shortly after, about 7 years ago, we were able to buy a plot in upstate New York of 20 acres. Before she passed, we were able to clear out, I don't know if you can see it very good, but a little chunk of heaven that we call the homestead. And I'm getting ready to build a barn here. But it's a 20-acre woodlot in Maven, New York, and we said we don't want to be on the grid at all. Because I had done the thing where you get the different people say, hey, we can get you your electric bill down, and all you got to do is call us once a year to continue to get the discount. I forgot to call. We ended up with some $300 electric bills, and I said, no more. I said, that's it. We're going off the grid. And I don't regret it a bit. I've had people remark to me, boy, I wish I had $300,000 or $30,000 in order to, get a solar system. It doesn't have to cost that much. Now, if you do grid-tied solar systems where you're tied into the grid, I don't know much about them. Because, well, the real electricity scares me to places. But DIY solar system is very, very doable. We started out, our very first solar system was a simple Harbor Freight 100-watt system for our camper when we went camping. And it worked great. It kept the battery charged. And at the time that we purchased it, I don't know, do you guys have Harbor Freight up here?
No.
It's Canadian, yeah. But it worked great. It's a 12-volt system. We paid about $150 US for it when we bought it. Right now, you can buy a similar system for about $190 US. In fact, the system that I bought, that you see here, with the one solar panels, this one was borrowed from a friend. But this one right here, I just passed on to Peter from Old Man King's Homestead, where it's still charging for him today. And that picture was taken in 2015 or 2014. Now, it comes with a PWM charge controller, which is a pulse width modulation. We're going to get into defining some of the differences because there's MPPT charge controllers also. We'll get into that in just a little bit. It comes with all the wires you needed for a 12-volt system, a couple lights that work great for outside. And it's designed for a small camp setting, small camper setting, and it's expandable. The charge controller will do up to 30 amps of intake, and it really works great. Because the camper had a converter in it that would take, and it would run your lights off the battery. but in order for any of the outlets to work, you need electricity. So what we did was we bought a cheap inverter, hooked it to the battery, plugged the camper power in there, and it worked great for us. For charging cell phones, running laptops, watching my grandkids watching movies. I do have, in fact, the one we bought in the back. It's not in too great a condition anymore, but I have it so you can see it and just get an idea of what the technology is. A 2,000 watt inverter is what I run my cabin, my off-grid cabin home on now. For an actual home, if you wanted to do everything that you want to do for a regular house, if you wanted to run everything, I would suggest maybe 3,000 watt or 4,000 watt inverter, but not one of these. I use one similar to this in my vehicle, so if I need to charge my laptop when I'm away from home or whatever, that works. While we were building our 32 by 32 cabin on the homestead and staying in the camper, we upgraded the solar system to a 200 watt system kit from Renogy. I am not affiliated with Renogy in any way, however, I can't say enough about them. When I called them and explained my system to them, which was some stuff bought from Amazon, one or two things bought from Renogy, they helped me to understand what I needed to do, and the customer service was really, really great. While we were building our house, this is a 200 watt kit, 200 panels, two 100 watt panels, and you can see here I built a little shed on front of the camper because we increased to 4 12-volt lead-acid batteries, and this was plenty for everything we needed, and it ran the lights and everything we needed as far as plugging in laptops and video games. Okay, that was for me, not for the kids, but movies for the grandkids and stuff like that. And the camper setup was really awesome. When we moved to the cabin, we brought this along with us, but the cabin did not have a converter with it. So we had to replace that with an inverter charger. What this does is it takes the power from your batteries and changes it into 120 volt, 2,000 watts electricity, so you can run your household appliances. Okay. It also allows you, when I plug my generator into this, it also charged my batteries, and it has an automatic switch. You'll see in the diagram that we'll be looking at a little bit later, you'll see exactly what that looks like, because having that automatic switch is really nice. So 200 watts of solar panels and 2,000 watts of inverter charger ran our cabin for several years without issue, and we went up to, at one point we had 7 lead acid 12 volt deep cycle Walmart batteries. I paid $100 a piece or something somewhere in there back then for the batteries. And lead acid, it really worked, but there's more. When you do go off grid, if you decide to go with a smaller system such as this, there are some compromises you have to make. For instance, my wife knew she would never be able to use a hairdryer on my system. If she wanted to use a hairdryer, she could ask me to plug in the generator, but even with the lead-acid batteries, it just, anything that creates heat with electricity is usually caused by a dead short, from what I understand, and that uses a lot of electricity. I do have an electric crock pot. I don't use it. My wife did, but it was quite challenging because we'd start getting bells and whistles and I'd have to start the generator. Power tools I run directly from the generator. It's just not worth sucking power from the batteries for that. Electricity, when you're off grid, is a metered commodity. Like if you have a well that has a tendency to go dry, which I have one of those too. Basically I use my generator, I want to say I use it in the winter when it's dark. About every 3 or 4 days I run about a gallon and a half to 3 gallons of gas through it, just to top off the batteries, charge them up, because even with my new batteries that I got, I lost my thought. That happens, bear with me. In 2021, we upgraded from the 200-watt Renogy panels. I was given the opportunity to buy some used panels. When a lot of these big panel solar farms go down, they have to replace their solar panels every so often. The solar panels do not recycle well. So a lot of them were being thrown out, and a friend of mine's son-in-law in Arizona got a bunch of them real cheap. He said, instead of throwing them in the dumpster, put them on my truck. I paid about $100 for each one of these solar panels. They're 250-watt solar panels. And that increased me to 1,000 watts of solar panels. With these two are hooked in a series, and these two are hooked in a series, and then I plugged the two 500-watt series in parallel because I increased to a charge controller that I got simply off Amazon that is a 60-amp charge controller, and I didn't want to go over that. Now this is an MPPT charge controller. I went from the pulse wave modulation charge controller to MPPT maximum power point tracking charge controller. It's way more efficient. We noticed that even with the lead acid batteries, they were lasting a lot longer and charging a lot faster. We were spending more time on float, which is where the solar panels are just keeping you at the desired level. At this time, we're using the 7 lead acid deep cycle batteries from Walmart, and that gave us about 763 amp hours. An amp hour is how many hours that you can pull from your battery 1 amp. So if you were running something that used 1 amp, I could run it for 763 hours. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things that do not just draw 1 amp. We run propane cook stove, propane refrigerator, and at this time we just had a little freezer on top of the refrigerator. Everything, food storage and all, was canning and stuff like that. The difference between a PWM and an MPPT charge controller is simply a PWM controller. The current is drawn out of the panel at just above the battery voltage. So I'm using 12-volt batteries, so it was drawing out 12 volts and however many amps that it could muster. With the MPPT solar charge controller, the current is drawn out of the panel at the panel's maximum power voltage. It's like a DC to DC converter. This will explain a little bit better. I don't know how well you can see it, but a 250-watt panel that is rated for 32 volts and 7.8 amps. A PWM charge controller will pull it out at 7.8 amps and 12 volts, and it will charge your batteries at 7.8 amps and 12 volts. An MPPT solar charge controller with the same panel will pull the electricity out at 7.8 amps and 32 volts. And it will charge your battery at 20.8 amps and 12 volts. So it swaps it around so that you're getting more amps. An amp is the actual energy. The volt is what pushes that energy through the wire. So hopefully that made that clearer than mud for you. We also, in July of 2022, we upgraded our battery system from lead acid to LiFePO4 battery. Basically, LiFePO4 is iron phosphate, or lithium iron phosphate. The Li is lithium, the Fe is iron, and the PO4 is phosphate. They last years longer than lead acid batteries. And they require no maintenance, whereas lead acid batteries, depending on the ones you get, even the deep cycle boat batteries require you to keep an eye on the water level within them. And that can be a pain just because I don't want to have to think about it. And Fat Man is lazy. The lithium iron phosphate batteries operate 10 times longer than lead acid, resulting in fewer costs per kilowatt hour. For example, a Super B lithium battery, not sure what that is, but it can reach 5,000 cycles or more. These batteries from, they changed the name from ampere time to lifetime, but it's 12 volts, 200 amp hours, and it's rated for 4,000 cycles. A cycle is considered when you drain a battery down to a certain point.
Is there a lot of maintenance on those batteries?
No maintenance whatsoever. In fact, you can see there are 2 posts on top, and that's it. There's no place to put water. There's They basically take care of themselves. There's actually a computer in these batteries. Lead acid batteries deliver only up to 500 cycles, as higher levels of discharge reduce your cycle life. The more you're pulling out, the less time it's going to last you with a lead acid battery. Here we got lead acid batteries have an average of 1,500 cycles if they're well maintained. I already confessed, Fat Man is lazy. I don't like to do maintenance when I don't have to. Without maintenance, it drops to 600 or 700 cycles at best. Lithium ion batteries require no maintenance and still have 80% of their original capacity after 3,000 cycles. When the electric drill, the cordless drills first came out, they were using lead acid concepts in batteries. And you would notice as you were driving screws, it would slowly get weaker and slower in driving in those screws. Well, if you own a cordless drill today with a lithium battery, you'll notice that you will be going along at the same power, and then all of a sudden, it'll just drop off. But this is the lifetime of the battery. It just goes right down real fast with the lead acid. 80% of the original capacity at 3,000, that's, in my book, I will probably keep my lithium batteries for a very long time past that. This is what I was talking about. Lead acids can only be discharged. You can only take 50% to 30% of the charge out of a lead acid battery before it forms a memory and starts degrading quickly. Lithium ion can handle up to 90% of the charge before it needs to be recharged. In real life terms, this means the longer operational activity and less costly downtime. Workers have to swap batteries. That's not for us. The lead acid, like I said, it's a slow draw, whereas the lithium ion, it levels out, and then all of a sudden at the end, it'll drop right off. I have to tell you, my lithium ion batteries, I don't get down to that point before the sun comes up in the morning. The lowest I've seen my lithium ion batteries was 11.6, and alarms started going off. My charge controller said, hey, your batteries are too far drained. My inverter charger alarm started going off, say, hey, your batteries are too far drained. I started the generator, alarms went off. I let it run for quite a while, but it built it right back up. Then the sun came up, and I was able to let the solar panels start doing their job. Okay, I have 4 of those lithium-ion batteries. I run a stand-up freezer. It's Energy Star rated. I don't do you guys do Energy Star? Because it drives me nuts nowadays. It used to be on the box. You could see a UL listing where it would tell you exactly how many watts a coffee maker was or an appliance was. They're not doing that because people aren't concerned about it anymore. We go in, we flick on lights. When you're on grid, there's no problem with just drawing as much electricity as you want. My brother, his kids, I love them to death, but he says they're always walking out of a room and leaving the lights on. My house, you can't do that so much. Otherwise, you'll end up with alarms going off. I have a microwave. It's a 750 watt microwave. It's a smaller one. I have a Keurig coffee pot. I don't use the Keurig coffee pot much in the winter because it's dark, and I want to keep those batteries as high as you can. I have a flat screen TV, and basically everything else other than heating utensils I can.
Sir, if I recall correctly, you said that you are using the propane fridge right now, so this is not on that list?
No, the propane fridge is not on this list.
Right.
This is only what's drawing my electric. I'll run my small 2,000 watt generator for about 5 hours, which costs me about a gallon and a half of gas. I think there's 3 liters in a gallon, 4 liters in a gallon. Okay. I had the math. But every 3 or 4 days, as needed, to charge my 4 batteries. Right now, I'm not really worried about electricity because we're getting enough sun through that it takes them right up to float by, I'm wanting to say by 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, my batteries have reached that level where it's just maintaining them. Whereas once summer hits and the sun is higher in the sky, 9 o'clock will be my latest. Yes?
I don't know if I'm going backwards here or not, but is there any concerns about safety between the 2 different batteries? Like, is one more efficient or safe to use than the other?
With all of the batteries, I do my best to make sure that they're safe. With lead acid batteries, they do put off a chemical, a gas. They should be vented. With the lithium batteries, my understanding is that is not a problem. To be perfectly honest with you, with my lead acid batteries, I never vented them. I had them in my pantry, and with my wood stove going on a really cold day, I was opening windows, so I was really well vented anyway. I would suggest creating some kind of vent to let those gases, if you use lead acid batteries, out, or have a lot of people put boxes on the side of their house to contain their batteries. You gotta be careful with the cold though, because they can freeze.
Yeah, so the lithium batteries, is that not what, I don't mean to break them up here, but if Tesla runs in their cars?
I'm not sure.
So I was wondering about.
They are lithium, they are lithium,
Yeah.
I believe. And I do know that after so many cycles, there comes people who are buying electric cars are finding out that after so many cycles, they're having the problem, and one of the largest costs in an electric car is the battery pack itself, and it makes up, if I'm right, I believe it takes up quite a portion of the car. So yeah, be very careful. Read your directions. When I bought my lithium batteries, they came with a booklet. I read the booklet. I had to adjust my my inverter or my charge controller so that it would take them up ampere time. Now it's called lie time, I guess. But ampere time told me, they said, listen, we'd like you to flow them at 13.8 volts. My batteries very rarely this time of year and in the spring and in the fall and definitely in the summer, very rarely get below 13.2 volts. And on a lead acid battery, 12.7 volts is a full charge. And I think they take it to 13.2 for an equalizing charge, which equalizes all the batteries. My experience is mostly, really? My experience is mostly from dealing with my own system, building my own system, but it's something that when people say, man, I wish I could do this with my cabin, but I can't afford it. You can go piece by piece. You can start small and build and add and learn. And the more you learn, my journey's not over. Eventually, I'm going to have a larger solar panel set up, and I'll have at least one more battery bank. You do not want to mix batteries. I don't even suggest mixing an old battery with a new battery. If you have a battery go bad and you put a new battery in there, the other batteries are going to take that new battery down to their level. It all equals out. I told you about the alarms. Now, my lighting system is on a different system entirely. This is my lighting system. I got it, again, straight off Amazon. It comes with a 12 by 12 inch solar panel of its own and 3 lights. The lights have 3 levels, low, medium, and high. On high, they are about 200 lumens, which is about a 40-watt bulb. My brother comes to my house and he says, it's dark in here. I can read by these easily. I found that I can walk out, if I have my light on, because I only have one on at a time depending on what room I'm in, which it's pretty much a 3-room cabin. I have a pantry, a bathroom, and everything else is all in together. But I've had no problems with this. In fact, I doubled down a few years ago and bought a second unit. So now I have the 6 lights. It all works together. And when this meter goes down to the 2 bars, I just unplug these 2 wires here and plug them into the second unit. And I'm good. The sun will take that up. it can also be charged by a Nokia-style cell phone charger. And it'll also charge your cell phone. I found it better this way because lighting has always been a concern. Now, we've learned the wonders of LED lighting, which greatly reduce it. Whether you're on grid or off grid, I would suggest changing to LED lighting. Because it just saves so much electricity. This is how a solar system works. There are 12, I think, booklets. The Backwoods Solar, their catalogs, actually. They sent me 12 of their catalogs, and this is where I got this diagram from. This has got, let's see, starting with the solar panels, these are in parallel. Mine are 2 panels in series, and then 2 panels in series, and then they're connected in parallel. The 2 groups are connected in parallel. This goes into a charge controller, which keeps you from overcharging or depleting your batteries. This is a battery bank of 6-volt batteries. Another option for batteries is if you go to a golf course, they use the 6-volt batteries in their golf carts. Sometimes they have to replace those. You can refurbish them to a point. These are hooked with 2 in a series. 6 volts and 6 volts would be 12 volts, 2 in a series, 12 volts, 2 in a series, 12 volts, all 3 hooked in parallel, which gives you the 12 volts, overall 12 volt system. Always hook your charge controller to your batteries first. This way it will, because most charge controllers are, they automatically sense whether you're running a 12, 24, or 48 volt system. Patrick is on, you're on 24 volt
Correct.
system. And how many of the lithium batteries?
I got 2 24 volts, 200 amp batteries.
Okay, so he's running off 400 amp hour batteries, but the 24 volts. The more volts, the more storage, because remember, the volts are what pushes the electricity and the amps are the electricity. So the more volts you have in your system, the less amps you're going to use, so you're saving more amps. It'll take longer to deplete it. And then you have a DC load center. This comes in handy. I have a small water pump back there that I use to water my now collapsed greenhouse. I use the 200 watt Renogy kit to keep a battery charge that I run that pump from. My well pump that is down in the well is a 12 volt pump made for solar well. I don't get the flow that you normally get, but with a lot of electrical appliances, you will get a charge. It'll have a strong draw right at first, and then it will level out. That's why my 2,000 watt generator, it's actually a 1,600 watt generator. But that initial charge, when an appliance kicks on, it can take up to 2,000 watt, and then it goes down to 1,600 watts for running. Okay? Then you have the AC side of things. Your generator hooks into your inverter charge controller, okay, which has a battery charger that goes to the batteries, and then it converts the DC to AC for your outlets, and there's an automatic transfer switch. You can buy all of these separate. However, at the price of each one of them, you don't really need to, in my opinion. And that would go to your AC load center, which would, it's like your house breaker box. It runs your lights if they're hooked into it, your outlets and such as that. So the DC side of it, you have your panel array to your charge controller. Always hook your charge controller to your batteries first so it can know, because if it starts sending 24 volts that your solar panels are calling for or trying to send into 12-volt batteries, it can be bad. It'll destroy your batteries. And then the load center and the AC generator into your inverter controller charger, or your inverter charger, and into your load center. I have my old inverter charger back there if you want to look at it. It's slightly different than this. This is the one I had to get for lithium batteries. The one that's back there will not work with lithium batteries. It just doesn't have that setting. I think this was around $600 for this, but it is so nice to be able to start the generator, plug my cord into the generator, and automatically I'm charging my batteries and running the house. If I want to, I can run my Keurig coffee pot with the generator, but with the lithium batteries, and as long as the sun is up, I can make several cups of coffee without worrying about overdrawing my batteries. So all of this, all of the battery charging, the DC to AC inverting, and the automatic transfer switch is all contained in this box here. And that is basically my presentation. I do have, I have a website that has links to everything on it. There's a blog, there's merch, there's low to no content books. There's some examples of them back there, and a couple kids' books.
Jesse, there's a question.
Oh, question, yes.
I was just curious, for this setup, is it possible to hook your solar panels instead of the generator to that charge controller?
No. Well, the solar panels have to go through an actual charge controller. This is made, whether it be a PWM or the MPPT, it is made to protect your batteries and charge your batteries from the solar panel. Because the strength of the sun, a lot of times, will dictate how many you're not always going to have a maximum power coming from your solar panels. On a dark day, I have seen, from first thing in the morning when it's darker out, I might be drawing in 120 watts from my solar panels. And the charge controller has to know how to regulate that and make the right wattage and the right volts, especially, to charge the batteries as well as it can. That's why I like the MPPT charge controller. But as far as using this, as far as using the inverter controller, it is not made to regulate the charge from solar panels. In fact, you would probably get an error saying that I have gotten an error. I bought a generator, I brought it home, I hooked it up, I started it up, I plugged in I used just a regular 12 gauge extension cord. You don't want to run a light extension cord from your generator because you're dealing with way too much electricity. You'll lose a lot in the process, and you can burn up your light cord and cause fires. But I plugged it in and I started getting, it ran good for about 10 minutes and I got an error. Somewhere along the line, the generator went from 60 hertz to either, I forget whether it was 65 hertz that it went to or 50 hertz, but when that hertz changed, this couldn't deal. It was saying, no, there's something wrong with the system. It was made for the common power. So yeah, basically, you can also hook shore power up to this. A lot of people use these in boats, or a version of this in boats. So they call it shore power in a lot of the catalogs and instruction manuals, which is just a constant 120. But when 120 volts are available from a power source, it will feed your batteries and your house. And when it's not, it will just draw from the batteries and convert it to AC. I hope I answered your question. Yes?
So you mentioned though like large appliances, what would you do like washing and drying for clothes?
I have a washing machine because of my water situation, because, okay, we established I'm lazy, but I've come up with some tricks so that I have to do things so that I don't just die. And so I have water tanks. I also have a shallow well that can go dry in the middle of summer. So I fill the tanks. And what was the question one more time?
If you can have washing and drying.
Oh, yes. So I have a auto sensing washing machine that senses how much clothes are in there, and it'll only use that amount of water. It's also Energy Star. A dryer, if you're talking about a smaller system like I'm talking, like we're dealing with here, I would go with either a propane dryer
Or a clothesline.
or a clothesline.
Hair
A wood fire and a clothesline works awesome in the winter. And then outside, there's nothing like the smell of wind-dried clothes. Yes?
Are you using a pure sine wave inverter?
Yes.
Setup? Yes.
Yes, that, these are pure sine wave inverters, which makes them good for, I don't know if you can get the other, wave inverters anymore. I'm not sure on that, because if you hook up a laptop to a non-pure sine wave inverter, it's not the right hertz or not the right frequency of electricity, and it can damage electronics. With this setup here, you never notice when I go from battery power to generator power.
Just to add to the lady's question here, when you think about going off grid and stuff, think about everything that takes 220 volts. So dryer, baseboard, heating, forget about that, because you need a way bigger system that perhaps you can afford. But definitely you need to think about the dryer in other situations that make sure dry.
Isn't it?
Well, on that part there, like, you're saying propane. So up here in Canada, right now it's about 86 cents a liter plus carbon tax. How much propane that you use for your stove and your fridge and your heating and all that stuff, you have to think about that. If you're spending $4,000 or $5,000 a year, convert that into solar, and then you can run your dryer, your stove, and everything like that. And not be tied to anything. Like, just because you go solar doesn't mean you have to go down to, you got 12 volt lights that only work at 40 watts, right?
Right.
So I personally got rid of 3/4 of my propane consumption because I just didn't want to use propane. So I found like a wood furnace instead of a propane furnace. Where I live, that I get wood and stuff, so that's no problem. But you have to think otherwise, and it's a matter of using anything. Toaster takes 1,000 watts. Dryer takes more than that. Everything that takes 220 will take about 1,000 watts to run. So think about that when you create your system.
Tracy?
Yes.
So the solar powered well pump, you said limited flow. And then you kind of answered it, you have holding tanks in your cabin.
I have two 55-gallon barrels, plastic barrels inside my pantry
Yep.
for the winter. I've got it set up where all I have to do is flip a switch. It goes from my DC load center to a switch and then down to the pump. And I have a hose, I stick it in the thing, flip the switch, gotta give it a few seconds, but it fills, to fill the 55-gallon drum, I set a timer. Never forget to set your timer, unless you like to mop.
But you can put a float on that.
Yeah, you could put a
You
float
can put a
on
float
there.
on. So then next question is, when my daughter gets in the shower, and you use a timer on that too?
No,
She's only got 3 gallons. She won't be in there longer than 40 seconds.
I don't have any hair, so it's not a big problem.
if you turn down your water heater, she'll shower quick.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I can do outside the washroom.
Yes. The thing is, my wife and I, when we were both taking showers, say on a Sunday morning, we were getting ready for church, we used between the two of us, about 10 gallons of water. Because of my water setup, I have forget the name of it. It is a on-demand hot water heater that is actually designed, it came as a package, and it's actually designed so you fill a 5-gallon bucket, you put a hose in that, you hook it to a propane tank, and it has a shower head.
Yep.
You control the hot water, the temperature of the water by a dial on the hot water tank. I was planning, before she got sick, I was planning on surprising her with a brand new hot water heater where we didn't have to do that. But, hey, for me it works. And it will take the skin off you with heat. But you'd be surprised, as long as you're staying conscious, with me and my wife, every 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, during the winter, I had to fill my 55-gallon barrels, 255. In the summer, when I can have the water outside, I have 300-gallon totes that I fill with a gas-operated water pump, straight from the well. And that way, if the well goes dry, I still have that reserve. I also collect rainwater. Is that legal in Canada?
Yeah.
It's one of the few things that New York has not dictated to us, that they own the water in the rain. So yeah, if you have someone, it's something that you have to be mindful of when you're working with a small, I'm going the wrong way, with a small system. You have to be mindful of, these are commodities. You are now, you're not being a consumer, you're being a producer, which is what homesteading is really boils down to. You're producing the things you need rather than paying someone else to produce the things you need. And the more self-sufficient you can be, in my opinion, the better.
The property I have right now, I'm already set up off-grid with solar. So we have the lead batteries, and I'm still learning all this. I've learned more right now, probably since I have the property. But back when you said if one of the batteries was to die, and you put replace it with brand new, it would automatically bring down the level of the rest of the batteries. What is your suggestion in that situation? Just replace all the batteries and finger cross it? Should I at that point transition to a lithium concept?
If it's at all possible, I would not suggest mixing lithium and lead. I don't know what that would do. That's why I don't suggest it.
Right.
But I paid for the batteries I just got in 2022. I paid $700 and something per battery. It was an investment, but it was well worth it to me, because for me and my wife, it was fine. For me, it's perfect. I would like, because every once in a while in the dark of winter, I'm like, man, I just wish I had 4 more batteries just to store another 8, so that even if I had it manual, so I could switch it if I needed to, so I wasn't drawing those batteries, because the less you take the level of your battery down, the longer it's going to last. But yeah, what I would do is I would stay with your lead acid batteries while you can, and try to budget out what you can as far as saving up, and then make one purchase of the new batteries of whichever type you like. I was told you can't use Walmart batteries on solar systems. And I said, okay, Die Hard maybe? I don't know. And they're like, well, no, they won't. I'm like, I'm talking deep cycle batteries. Well, yeah, but they won't work. When you have a deep cycle battery hooked up to a trolling motor, it's basically you're draining it, you take it home, you recharge it. And that's basically what you're doing in a night-day cycle here, is you're draining it during the night time, and then you're charging it during the daytime. So my suggestion would be to save up and do what you can when you can. It would be better, I would say, in my experience, and I'll ask Patrick if he agrees, I would rather go with one 200 amp hour lithium battery than 2 lead acid batteries. Of the same, of more amp hours.
They say that the less battery, the better. So if you have a system on 24 volt, if you can have 1 battery, it's better than 2, let's say. If you can have 2 instead of 4, it's better that way. So the less battery, the better the current.
And 24 volts, all your wiring is half the amperage. So you half the size.
Yeah, but you cannot use 24 on a 12 volt system, let's say.
But you have a 24 volt system.
Yes.
Right. I use, to my outlets, I use 12-2 wire, which is by code in New York State. I even, to run, I use the Romex outside 12-2 to go to my water pump in the well. And that's decent. But I would definitely say I would go with less amp hours with lithium than more amp hours with lead acid, for the simple reason, where is it? This chart right here, because once you make it, this is 50% mark, you need to recharge a lead acid battery, or it can form a memory. With the lithium, it keeps going a lot longer with the max power, so I don't have to worry about my freezer trying to draw the power it needs and not having it because the battery is down here somewhere. As long as I know, on my system, I know if I hit 12.6 volts on my batteries, I need to start the generator or check the weather to see if it's going to be a sunny day, and hope the sun comes up early. So did I answer everybody's questions on it? Did I move from?
I actually have another question. So you are using a propane fridge currently. Is there a reason why you chose propane over the solar? And how is the maintenance on your propane fridge? Do you have any issues with the vent kind of frosting up on you or anything like that?
No. We initially went with the propane fridge because Fat Man's also cheap. The initial investment, I think think it's a 12 cubic foot, it's a smaller fridge, but the initial investment, I figured we would make up on that when we were on lead acid batteries. I didn't want to risk losing food. Food is a precious commodity. And though we can and everything like that, you still have your perishables that need to be kept cool. So as far as the maintenance on them, in the 7 years that we've had the fridge for 5 to 6 years. Every 2 to 3 weeks, I dust the back rack. I make sure that there's a little, it's like a damper vent thingy on the top of the back of the fridge. I jiggle that to make sure it's free. And I make sure it's dust free and out from the wall the specified amount. And that's all I have done. It vents right into the house. It's made for that.
Follow up on that, how much propane are you consuming with that fridge?
Okay, at 80 degrees, that propane refrigerator used a quarter, I believe it was a quarter of a gallon of propane a day. But we started off with, I would take a 100-pound tank, which 100-pound tank holds 7 gallons in it? Is that 7 times? Anyway, math again. But yeah, just a regular 100-pound tank, and we would get 3 months, and that's cooking, and my wife loved to bake, and man, she cooks some good food. But so we did the cooking, we did the refrigerator, and it would last about 3 months on a 100-pound tank. I have since upgraded because I'm getting older, and lifting that 100-gallon tank when it's full, or 100-pound tank when it's full, and setting it where it needed to be got hard. So now I have 2 100-gallon tanks, and they deliver the propane, and it lasts me a year. And they charge me a storage fee. But yeah, they're really efficient. The technology has come a long way. I remember when we first started out, we were paying, I believe it was supposed to be $1 a watt, something similar to that, and now I believe it's around 75 cents for a watt. But there are ways around. You don't need to pay $30,000, go into serious debt to make your electric company rich with an on-grid system, unless that's what you want. Even if you do the joint system, the battery and the on-grid system, I would suggest making sure that you get batteries in that mix. And be aware, if you use more than you make, like in the summer you're going to make power, they're going to bank that power for you, and then they'll give it back to you. But when you hit your limit, they're going to charge you. And I have never known a big corporation to not make a lot of money when it happens. Any other questions? Yes?
Are there special pumps, you said, for your well that are made for solar that maybe don't have a big draw at the beginning?
Yes. The pump that I have in my, I should have got pictures of all that. The pump I have down in my well is made to run off a solar panel with no battery. Yes, with no battery. You can purchase them, they don't have that initial shock draw. To pressurize my house, because I've just got the 255-gallon barrels there, in order to pressurize my water, I have a camper battery, or a camper water pump, similar to the one that's back there, and what it does is when it will pump up to 50 psi in your lines, and then when it hits 30 psi, it turns the pump on. Now my water pressure, I want to go up to 60 psi pump as soon as I can, but it's going to be a while because I don't want to spend the money till this one goes back. But the pressure, it's just a system that's made for a camper. But it's on all the time. When I turn the spigot on, I hear the pump come on. When it has a problem sucking the water from the thing, say I run the 55-gallon drum dry, and it's happened, I hear the change in the sound. It's louder than a lot of the conventional pumps. But it's made to run DC. So you can hook it straight to your batteries if you want. Yes?
Was the DC well pump very expensive? The 12-volt one that you use, $1,000 or something?
No. You can search Amazon. I want to say it was $300 or $400. And like I said, I don't have the pressure. Eventually, I'm going to devise a system because I can't do things normally. It's just not in me. I want to devise a system where I have a bladder tank, like a normal well would run to the pump in the bladder tank, and that would pressurize my system but still draw from my tanks. I'm not quite sure how that'll look, but maybe next year I'll be able to, if they invite me back. I failed the math today. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button, that subscribe button, that little notification bell so that you get notified every time I come out with new content. YouTube has a video right down here that's specially for you, and I got a playlist up here that is specially for you. You're gonna love it. All right, y'all have a great day, and God bless.